What's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for coming back to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I really, really appreciate it. Today, I have a hopefully entertaining, potentially controversial video for you today. Today, I am making a tier list of all the wide receiver twos that are currently slated as the wide receiver twos for all 32 NFL teams. Now, before we get into this, I want to let everyone know watching, it is April 19th. We are about a little over a week away from the draft when this was made. So obviously things will have changed. If you're watching this in June, July, August, your team could have signed someone, team could have drafted someone, and whoever the wide receiver two is currently on this list is not their wide receiver two now. I decided to make this video at this time because I kind of wanted to get an idea of where teams are at right now with their wide receiver rooms. And which teams are potentially going to upgrade in the draft or maybe post-draft free agency. And I can always update this, make a new one as the season gets closer. Not a big problem, and it'd be kind of cool to see how teams how much they improved since before, pre-draft. So again, made April 19th, keep that in mind. I do have 5 categories, and before I get into the categories, the idea of this is to grade these players based on what I think they'll do next year or over the next couple of years. I'm not looking at like 10 years in the future, and I'm not looking at what they have done over the last 10 years. Like if Julio Jones is on this list, if we're judging based off career, he'd be number 1 on the list. But we're judging on, okay, what's he going to do in 2022 and maybe 2023, 2024, over the next couple years, basically, because it's really hard to predict past that in the NFL. Things change so much. You can't really look past, 2-3 years at the most. So the categories, I have 5 categories, starting with potential, pretty self-explanatory. It's receivers that are maybe going into their 2nd or 3rd year, and they still have potential. They have potential to be maybe elite, number 1, or even a number 2. They haven't played as like even a number 2 at this point, but they do have that potential to be a number 2 or number 1 receiver. Next one's below average, not good. Again, self-explanatory, and I'm not trying to say these players are trash. I'm just saying if this player is your number 2 wide receiver, you don't feel completely comfortable with that. And you, as a fan, could say, my team needs to improve. Wide receivers are so important in today's football. Look at the Rams, who just won the Super Bowl. They had Cooper Kupp. They had Robert Woods, who got hurt. They went and got, they had Van Jefferson. They went and got Odell Beckham even before Woods got hurt. They knew how important it was to just have all these weapons on your team. You need weapons to win. That's why I think the Packers have struggled over the last several years. The offense was basically Devonta Adams and a bunch of other guys. And when you get into the situations and you play better teams in cold weather and close games, they know that, and they can focus in on one player. They can't focus in on 3 or 4 different players. So below average, not good. It's just a player who maybe as a wide receiver 3, they'd be fantastic. But I just don't think they should be a wide receiver 2. Average is average. Again, self-explanatory. You don't feel like it's the end of the world if this is your wide receiver 2 for your team. However, you wouldn't mind an upgrade, and it would make your team go from potentially a good offense to an elite offense. If your wide receiver 2 now becomes your wide receiver 3, and your wide receiver 2 is an average wide receiver 2, but it becomes your wide receiver 3, I think Tyler Boyd here is a good example. To me, Tyler Boyd as a wide receiver 2 is kind of right around average, maybe the highest level of average. But you make him your wide receiver 3, now your team is loaded, right? Wide receiver 2, again, this is basically a receiver who should be a wide receiver 2 on most teams in most situations. They shouldn't be a wide receiver 1. If they are your wide receiver 1, you're not feeling super great about it, or it means there's some kind of injuries. I think Hunter Renfro last year, yes, he was the wide receiver 1 for the Raiders. But do you really want him to be your wide receiver 1? Probably not. So yeah, it's with those players, you don't expect them to take over games by a game-to-game basis, but they could every 2 or 3 games, or 2 or 3 games of a year. And then the last one is elite. could be wide receiver number one. These are the best of the best. These are the wide receivers who, if they had to be a wide receiver one, they could be. You don't necessarily want them to be, and it's much better when these guys are your wide receiver two, or they're your 1B maybe. But either way, you're happy with it. Okay, so we're gonna get started. We're gonna get into this, and yeah, we'll see how controversial it gets. First guy on the list is Brandon Ayuk from the 49ers. Of course, Deebo Samuel is the wide receiver one. He kind of took a hold of that. Brandon Ayuk's going into his third year. He's played 2 years in the NFL. He kind of had a weird start to last year, coming off a really good end to his first year. I'm going to put Brandon Ayuk in the potential category, and I'm going to put him here because I think he could still be a wide receiver one. I think he's performed his first 2 years as a wide receiver two. I think he still could be a wide receiver one. He was drafted, in the first round. He had that run his rookie year where he looked like the best receiver, and a lot of people thought he was the best receiver going into the 49ers season. So I'm going to leave him at potential, and that's more out of a sign of respect than anything. If I put him at wide receiver two, I feel like it'd be a little disrespectful. I'm going to try and rank these inside each tier level as well. We'll see. Next guy up is Allen Robinson. I know Allen Robinson had a terrible year last year. I'm going to put Allen Robinson as a wide receiver too. That you'd be happy. I'm going to kind of forget about last year. I'm going to think about the last several years besides last year of Allen Robinson. He's been, easily going into 2022. 2021. He would have been here on this list. So I'm not going to put him down to average just yet. We'll see what he does this year with the Rams. He's kind of in the perfect situation. You have an alpha male, an alpha wide receiver. You can focus on being the wide receiver two. You have a good quarterback, good offense, good coach. So he should put up wide receiver two numbers this year, in my opinion. Let me just make sure I am recording because I would be a little upset. Yes, I am recording. Good. Next up on the list, we have Robbie Anderson. I kind of struggle with Robbie Anderson. Pre-2020, 2020, I would have put him in the average category. He had a really good 2020 season for the Panthers, and then he had a really disappointing season in 2021, but it was kind of the whole Carolina offense in general. So I don't know how much of that was Robbie Anderson's fault. So I think at this point, for how much they paid him and for his 2020 season, I'm going to put him wide receiver two. I'm not putting him above Allen Robinson. Don't think he deserves to be there. So he'll probably finish near the bottom of wide receiver two, but he's one of those where he could easily fall into the average category after this year. Next up, we have Rashad Baiman. Rashad Baiman has to go into the potential category. I think there's no other way around it. He is potential. He's going into his second year. Kind of had a weird, not a weird first year, but he had an okay first year. He had 500-600 yards or something. So to me, he deserves potential. It's too early to tell with him. Okay, next up on the list we have Marquez Callaway. I'm going to put Marquez Callaway. I know he's just a second year guy. He was undrafted. I'm going to put him below average. This could be controversial. Again, this is me thinking, what is he going to do, between next year and the year after that? And I just think he's kind of below average. I think if he's your third wide receiver, or a specialist kind of wide receiver that is like a deep threat guy or a third down guy, that's perfect what you want. If you want him as your number two, and you're going to see number twos up here where you're like, wow, these are number two receivers, you'll kind of understand why I'm putting Callaway here. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong, and he could have an average or even a wide receiver two season. I mean, that's the potential for all these guys, really. But I feel like what did he have last year? Like 700 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns or something. And I think that was more there was no one else really. So yeah, Chase Claypool. I think a lot of people would want me to put him here. I don't think he's proven he can be a number one yet, but I do think there's potential. I'm going to put him in the highest right now potential category. I do think there's potential, and again, this is more out of respect than anything, but the fact that I'm not putting him here because I think he could be here. I don't think Allen Robinson and Robbie Anderson are going to be here. And this is a sign of respect for Claypool. I think he's kind of been hurt by Ben Roethlisberger over the last couple of years, just not being able to throw deep, and he kind of seems to excel in that way. Big-bodied receiver, can kind of like Mike Evans get up and catch the ball and deep balls and stuff like that. He's not going to be the best route runner, but I do think he could be, in that number one category. So that's why I'm putting him in potential. Next up we have is Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb, I'm sorry, but this is below average. I even put him below Marquez, Callaway. If this was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, all right, Randall Cobb's a number 2, in the heydays of the Packers and Jordy Nelson and, a young Devontae Adams. They were stacked, they had Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb. Devontae Adams was their number 3 receiver. But what is Randall Cobb? 31, 32 years old. It's just like, at this point, if he's your wide receiver too, and I know the Packers signed Sammy Watkins. I made this before. I made the tier list before they signed Sammy Watkins. And even if this was Sammy Watkins, I think I would still put it in the below average. If you look at Cobb and Sammy Watkins' numbers over the last 4 years, they're very similar. I think Cobb even has a little bit better numbers. So, but at this point, it's below average. It's like, please, Packers, get Aaron Rodgers another weapon. Don't have Allen Lazard be wide receiver 1. Okay. Moving on, Corey Davis. I like Corey Davis. I know he was drafted very, very high. He was drafted to be a number 1. Never lived up to that. I think the potential for him is his 2020 season when A.J. Brown really took over as the number 1 receiver, and Corey Davis was able to be the number 2 receiver, and Corey Davis had a great season as a number 2 receiver on a running team at that. He put up almost 1,000 yards and I don't know how many touchdowns, but had to have been 6+ touchdowns. So I'm putting him in the wide receiver 2. I think he's kind of the perfect wide receiver 2. If the Jets can get something going with Elijah Moore, I believe. I'm drawing a blank there, but with Moore and Zach Wilson at wide receiver 2, Corey Davis is kind of that perfect guy. Next up, we have Curtis Samuel. I'm putting Curtis Samuel average. To me, Curtis Samuel is not who you want as your wide receiver 2. I know he was basically hurt all last year and did nothing, but he did sign big money contracts to be kind of a wide receiver 2 to McLaurin. I just don't think you want him as your wide receiver 2. I think he's perfect as a wide receiver 3 like he was with the Panthers in 2020. They had DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and then Curtis Samuel was like, he was able to do all the little stuff, the bubble screens, the short stuff, taking handoff, very versatile kind of weapon because he was that 3rd receiver. And I think that's exactly where you want him. So I'm going to put him in average. You're not like completely upset with it. Also, just to make a note, I'm not taking into account the Chiefs, obviously their wide receiver 1 is Kelsey. He's their main weapon. I'm not really taking that into account. I'm taking into account the receivers and where they are as a receiver, and ranking them against other receivers. So if you have Curtis Samuel as a wide receiver 2, you hope to have a tight end, a really good tight end. Okay, next up, it looks like we have Devonta Parker. Devonta Parker, man, as a wide receiver 2, I'm almost tempted to put him in the below average. I think that's a little harsh. And I think the guys we're going to put, I'll put him in the average. I think the fact, the wide receiver 1, Devonta Parker potential is kind of over. I know he had that one good season, in 2019 or 2020 or something, and he's just not a wide receiver 1. I know he was kind of drafted to be one, but it seems like that's over. It was kind of hard with New England. They do just have a bunch of wide receiver 2s on their list. I put Devonta Parker as the wide receiver 2, just out of respect for Jacoby Myers or Kendrick Bourne, whoever you think is the number 1. Having them having been there at least a year, both of them at least a year on the Patriots and with Mac Jones. So but they're all a bunch of like wide receiver twos in my opinion on the Patriots and now. So I put Devonta Parker as that guy for the Patriots. I'll put him average. I think you're not like the end of the world, but you would prefer to upgrade. Okay, so next is DJ Shark. DJ Shark was kind of a hard one to rank because he did have that one good season, not amazing, but he had a good season in 2019, I believe it was, just over 1,000 yards. But other than that, he hasn't really produced and he's been hurt a lot. I'm going to put him in the average. I'll put him above, I'll put him above these two guys because I do think there is that chance he gets into that wide receiver two, consistent guy. Obviously, he's with the Lions now. I put Amon St. Brown out of respect as the wide receiver one. Shark to me he's average. He did have that big year. I think a big reason why is because they really had no one else on that team, and they were starting Gardner Minshew a lot, and rookie quarterbacks tend to focus in on one guy and just kind of like, this is my guy who's doing well for me. I'm not good enough, experienced enough to read 4 or 5 different reads and to spread the ball around. So they really focus in on one guy. So that's kind of, I feel like, what happened that year. So I'll put him at the high average. Gabriel Davis, I'm going to put into the potential. I know Bills fans have a lot of they're super excited for him, and a lot of fantasy guys are super excited for him as well. I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit. I'm not going to say this guy's going to catch what he catch in that playoff game, 4 touchdowns or whatever. I'm not saying this guy's going to catch even double-digit touchdowns next year. I think I like him. I think he's a good player, and he's in a really good offense and with a good quarterback, so he could have put up really good numbers. I'm trying to look at this as like not necessarily like that player on the team 100%, but like overall across the league, where would they fall into? I'll put him in potential because I do think he could get into that wide receiver too. I think there's nowhere else to really rank him. He hasn't been good enough to be average because he hasn't had that opportunity. I'm not going to put him below average. Obviously not going to put him wide. I'm going to put him in potential. Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup. I'm going to come back to Michael Gallup. Next we have Godwin, elite, number 1 receiver, maybe the best, number 2 receiver. Could easily be the number 1. I gave it to Mike Evans out of respect. Again, Evans has been there for a while, super consistent. But Godwin could easily be the best receiver on the Buccaneers, and he could be the number 1 wide receiver for most teams. So yeah, he's easily up on that list. Jerry Judy, I put Jerry Judy on this list over. I put Courtland Sutton as the number 1 receiver. Again, kind of out of respect. And Judy, to be honest, Broncos fans, hasn't done it much. He had his opportunity. I know he hasn't been with the best quarterbacks, and that's not always an excuse. It can be an excuse, but that's not always an excuse. And look at Allen Robinson or look at DJ Moore. They put up numbers with bad quarterbacks. Amon St. Brown. Goff's not bad, but so I get the whole quarterback argument. But I'm putting Sutton as the team's number 1 right now. I can easily see Judy finishing as the number 1 this next year, and he was obviously drafted to be the number 1, but he just hasn't proven he can be. So I'm not. This is again out of respect for Courtland Sutton, who has led the team in 2019 and 2021. The 2 of the years he's healthy, he's led the team in receiving yards. So Judy goes into the potential. I'm going to put him here for now. I'm going to put him above Ayuk, Bateman, and Gabriel Davis because I really do think Judy can be, and I think he will with Russell Wilson, be a wide receiver 2 or even a elite wide receiver 1. But he just hasn't proven anything, and I don't want to put him in this average. The average stuff is like it's kind of settled. It's kind of certain. It's kind of set. Like this is what you are. You're not really. Maybe you'll sneak into here, but. Yeah. Lockett. I think Lockett at this point is a wide receiver 2. I'm going to put him at the very high end of wide receiver 2. I don't think you want Lockett to be your number 1. we haven't seen Lockett as a number one really in the last couple years. It's been Metcalf. I think Lockett's like one of the perfect wide receiver twos, and he could be number one. He could put up number one numbers next year. But, yeah, I just think at this point, if this was a couple years ago, I think Lockett would fall here. This is 2022. Lockett's a little older. I'm putting him here. He has to be close to 30 now. Has to be close to 30. Good. Next we have is Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones to me is average. I'm going to put him, below Devonta Parker. I think Devonta Parker has a little more potential than him. Marvin Jones is your number two receiver. To me is average. It's for the Jaguars. Christian Kirk I considered the number one, even though he's a newcomer. They paid him a lot of money to be a number one receiver. So Marvin Jones I'm going to put average. You don't feel like completely terrible with him, but I think you want to upgrade at this point in his career, especially. I think you want to upgrade, and him as like a third receiver is fantastic. Mike Williams goes into the number one spot. If you've watched any of my other videos, I'm a Chargers fan, but I'm not even being biased here. I think Mike Williams could finish easily as the number one receiver for the Chargers in this next year. And that's kind of the whole point of this group is like these guys could put up better numbers than the wide receiver one, potentially. So Mike Williams, I think, is a really good number two receiver, one of the best number two receivers. And he could be number one on teams. You don't want him to be, but he could be. Good. Next up, we have MVS. I put MVS for the Chiefs. I put him over, Mecole Hardman, just because, again, they paid him to be like that number two receiver. MVS. I'm going to put in the high average for that. Like, I'm going to put him here, I think. Because, again, I think Curtis Samuel is the perfect three receiver. I'm going to put MVS. I think he's kind of overrated. Like, how many years has MVS started? Let's just take a look. I know he's played at least 3-4 years. He's played 4 years in the league, so it's not like he's a young guy necessarily. He's played 4 years in the league. His best year was 690 yards and 6 receiving touchdowns, and he was with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So that can't be an excuse. He's going to another great quarterback. I think he's very good at what he does. He's a deep threat receiver, and that's kind of what you want him to do. I don't think he's a very good wide receiver too. I'm actually going to put him under Curtis Samuel. But I'll put him at average just because he does do something really good, really well. He does that deep threat, right? Next up, we have Nico Collins. Nico Collins is interesting. I think he was a rookie last year. Let me just double check that. Nico Collins as a rookie. Yes, he was a rookie. This is hard. He was a third rounder. So I'm going to put him in the. I'll leave him in potential. He's a rookie, and I liked what I saw from him in some games. He did have like a pretty decent stretch there, I think, of games. To end the season, not terrible. 69, nice. 14, 33, 35. I mean, not fantastic, but he had a couple. Yeah, I'm going to put him in potential. I think he could reach this average. I like Davis Mills this year too. So there's that. Okay, next up we have is Donovan Peoples-Jones. Another tough one. Let me just look again. I think he's been in the league 3 years. Donovan Peoples-Jones stats. Let's just look at Donovan Peoples-Jones and his stats. I think it's been only 2 years. To me, he's average. He kind of falls in that MVS category. I'm going to put him above Parker and Jones at this point because he's a younger guy and he still has potential. But he strikes me as an MVS type of guy. He's good at what he does, which is catch deep passes. And as a consistent wide receiver too, I don't think he is one of those. But we're gonna see, and I think it's unfair to put him in below average. I'm not gonna put him in potential because to me, if to fall under potential, I guess except for Nico Collins, to fall into the potential, it's like all these guys could be wide receiver twos and high wide receiver two category, or even into the ones. Byron Pringle, God, another guy. I want to put below average. I know I'm looking up a lot of stats here, but I think he's been in the league a few years too. And he hasn't, he's had 3 years. His best year was last year, not even 600 yards. And it's like, I understand you're on the Chiefs. Now he's on the Bears. He's on the Chiefs, and you have Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and all that. But if you're good, this is my theory. Like, if you are good and talented, you're gonna take catches and carries or whatever away from the other teams. Like, you're gonna, especially when you're with a really good quarterback. And we've seen teams with 3 options at quarterback receiver to support 3 good receivers. And I think the reason the Chiefs haven't really done that is because they don't trust anyone. They don't consider these guys that good. Man, I'm going to put Pringle as a below average. I'll put him in the high below average. I'll put him higher than, I'm going to put Callaway higher than him. I'll put him higher than Randall Cobb, but I'm going to put him in the below average, just not good. Like, I don't think that's what you want. I don't think he's a wide receiver too. I don't think he's ever going to be a wide receiver too. Just my opinion. Quez Watkins kind of falls into that same category, in my opinion. I'm putting him here. Again, some of these guys, I don't know their stats off the top of my head. I know he probably had 500 yards receiving last year, 600, 2 years in the league. I'm going to put him in below. I just don't think you want Quez Watkins as your, drafted in the 6th round. I know that doesn't mean everything, but it does mean something. You just don't think you want him as your wide receiver 2. As wide receiver 3, fantastic. Wide receiver 2, or even a player that steps in as a wide receiver 2 for a few games, fine. A wide receiver 2 for 17 games, I don't think you want that. These guys at least have proven they can put up numbers. Marvin Jones, Devonta Parker. Yeah. So I just don't, and I don't think they're necessarily good at one thing like a Peoples Jones or MVS. At least they are really good at one specific thing, catching deep balls. Hunter Renfro goes into the wide receiver 2. I'm going to put him above Corey Davis, above Robbie Anderson. I'm not going to put him ahead of Robinson or Lockett at this point. I know he had a really good year last year, kind of by default, kind of out of necessity, with Waller being hurt and Ruggs' situation. Renfro was never meant to be the number 1 receiver, but he became it, and he did what he could, and he put up numbers from what he was. But I don't think you want him as your wide receiver 2. I think he's a perfect wide receiver. I don't think you want him as your wide receiver 1. I think he's a perfect wide receiver 2. So I put Rondale Moore. I think when I made this, AJ Green had just signed, but I just think at this point, Rondale Moore should take over as the number 2 for the Cardinals behind Hopkins. And I'm going to put him in the potential list. I'll put him above Nico Collins. I'm putting him above Gabriel Davis. I'm putting him above Bateman. I like Rondale Moore a lot. I just think he's super explosive. And I'm excited to see what he can do if they give him the ball and get creative with him a little bit. So yeah, I'm excited for that. All right, the next one we have on the list. Oh, it's Tajay Sharp. I think the fact that it took me that long to even realize that tells you where he's going to go. If you want to get a laugh, or if you're a Falcons fan, a cry, just go look at the depth chart for receivers for the Falcons, and it's scary, scary bad. I know Kyle Pitts is the one option there, the number 1 option there, but you really need, Olamide Zacchaeus is going to be your number 1 receiver. Like, this guy going into last year was number 4 on the depth chart behind, before they traded Jones, Julio Jones, Ridley, and Gage. And now he's going to be your number one receiver. Like, man, I feel bad for Falcons this year, Falcons fans. Yeah, I feel really, really bad for those fans. Next up, we have is T. Higgins. T. Higgins goes, T. Higgins not in there. T. Higgins goes up here. He proved he can be a number one in 2020. I think that's why a lot of people are slightly shocked about the Jamar Chase draft, thinking they just drafted T. Higgins, I think, in the first round, and he produced, as at a pretty good level. But obviously, Chase is on another level than all these guys. To me, it's like a real big toss-up between these two. Like, they're kind of the very similar receivers in that sense. I think Mike Williams has a better chance to put up wide receiver one numbers than T. Higgins, because I think Mike Williams can do a little more than Keenan Allen for Justin Herbert, but I don't think T. Higgins is ever going to pass Chase. But T. Higgins is younger, so really it's just like, this is a toss-up. Adam Thielen, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking average. The guy is still producing. I know he doesn't. If you look at his numbers, it's like, man, he scores touchdowns like crazy now. He's just a touchdown machine. I know he hasn't had 1,000 yards for 3 years, but he had 925 and 14 in 2020, 726 and 30, and 10 touchdowns in 13 games last year. Like, that's going to be close to another 1,000-yard season. I know he's getting older. He's 31. Looking at it next year, I think he's a good wide receiver too. I'll put him there above Anderson and Corey Davis. I'll give Renfro a little respect here. Kadarius Toney, I really like, kind of like Rondale Moore. I'm going to put Toney right behind Rondale Moore. Actually, I'm going to put him ahead of Rondale Moore. These guys are all like guys that haven't done much in the league necessarily and just sheer numbers, but all have potential, whereas these guys have done stuff. I guess Judy is a kind of an exception to that, but I think Kadarius Toney could have a monster season if they have the right, they feed him. Okay, looking at T.Y. Hilton, I'm putting T.Y. Hilton below average at this point in his career. Out of respect, I'll put him above all these other guys, Quez Watkins, Marquez, Callaway. Yeah, it's just like T.Y. Hilton. Do you really want him as your number two receiver unless he's playing the Houston Texans? I was going to say he has to be at least 32 is what I was going to say. He's going to turn 33, in the middle of the season. If this was 2015, fantastic. We're talking T.Y. Hilton, who hasn't played a full season since 2017, hasn't put up 1,000 yards since 2018, just has not looked like himself, and that's just what happens, unfortunately. Could he still have an impact? Sure. Do you want him as your number two receiver? No, you don't. Michael Pittman being the number one, by the way. Jalen Waddle for the Dolphins, again, out of respect for Tyreek Hill and all he's done in the league. I'm putting Jalen Waddle up here. I know it may seem disrespectful to put him ahead of Higgins or Mike Williams, but I really do think Waddle can be a step above all those guys. And just showing what he did. They literally, at the last 6 games or whatever it was just like, all right, our whole offense goes through Jalen Waddle, and and he handled it. And I just really think Tyreek Hill is going to help him a lot. I know a lot of people are thinking, it's going to take a lot of numbers away from him, but I think it's going to help him a lot, and he could really, really explode. So I'm going to put him in the high 1 tier there. Just going to Michael Gallup, I'm going to put him in the wide receiver too. I look at him like Corey Davis and Robbie Anderson. I'm going to put him here. I'm going to put him above these two guys. He did have a really good season, in 2018 or 19. I think he can be a wide receiver too, and I think he can do it pretty successfully as well. So, yeah, I'll put him there. I kind of decided after thinking about it for a while. All right, and the last receiver on our list is Westbrook Ikhine, or I don't know exactly how to say his name, for the Tennessee Titans. A.J. Brown obviously being wide receiver 1. Man, I know he's only been in the league 2 years. I just don't think you want him as your wide receiver 2. Last year he had the opportunity, unfortunately, to be the wide receiver one because AJ Brown and Julio Jones got hurt, and he still only put up like 400 yards, and I think he played almost every game. He played in 16 games. He started 7 of them, so he was at least wide receiver 2 already in 7 of them. He still only put up 475 yards. And I know you guys are thinking like they're a run team, but 2020 you still had AJ Brown go over 1,000, and Corey Davis almost go over 1,000, and Johnny Smith put up good numbers. I just don't think you want this guy, unfortunately, as your number 2 receiver. As a number 3, okay. As a guy who has to step in for a couple games as a wide receiver 2, sure. Over 17 games, no. So I'm putting him in here. So there you have it, guys. This is my tier list of all 32 wide receiver 2s. Again, this was April 19th that I made this. I know this video is a little long. I love football. I love talking about football. I can talk for days about football. So I just have a lot to say when it comes to talking about football players. I really enjoyed doing this. I thought it was a kind of a fun way to kind of get into what's the status of each team's wide receiver rooms without like breaking down all the wide receivers. And I think by looking at this, you're saying, okay, Tampa Bay, Miami, the Chargers, and the Bengals, they have good wide receiver rooms, and that kind of correlates with this. The Rams are right up there as well. The Seahawks at the moment with Lockett and Metcalf are up there. Definitely the Raiders are up there with Adams and Renfro and Brian Edwards. So it's a good look at. It's a fun way to look at positional groups for teams, and I think it kind of worked out. There shouldn't be too many in the elite. And it's kind of a good little curve here. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can keep making more videos like this for you. I want to get, I've been doing a lot of content lately. I've been doing USFL stuff. I've been playing the Weddle game. I've been, doing these tier lists. I want to break down teams and divisions, and there's a lot of things I want to do. I want to do live streams, and I want to interact with you guys as soon as I get a bigger following, and I would really enjoy doing that. And but I can't do that unless you guys help me subscribe to the video, like the channel, ring the bell, and also leave a comment. Please leave a comment and tell me what you think, what I got wrong, where I'm stupid, where I'm an idiot at. And I'd love to hear your comments, and I'd love to go back and forth with you. So other than that, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much again, and I will see you guys next video.